I apologize. I'll try to keep this short, but I may jump back and forth between my analytics and my opinion. This is a kind of a review of Hobo on a Shoestring, or Hobo Shoestring, or IG Shoestring. I've had somebody hacking my account to my benefit, as I've already told you, and some people it's just coming up on their, and it's like they push on the hobo thing or something, or and all of a sudden I'm there. I will. Let me mention before I go into this. The one video it's actually gotten my most views of all, and people checking the analytics. People actually sat there and watched the whole thing because you were so curious about why I sat in that spot. That's one of your most curious things about. I got a My viewership is 65 and older, 100%, and only something like 69% of you claim to be American or in America. So I'm going to give a little, just my opinion. It's been almost 4 decades ago since I first went up to New York City and to Bangor, Maine. You know, King of the Road. Last boxcar, Bangor, Maine, destination Bangor, Maine, whatever. And then nobody's talking about there is the train's slow to make a curve right over as they go over the Kenduskeag River as it flows into the mighty Penobscot River. And I got to know a few hobos. As a matter of fact, I'd run into them once they got cleaned up. See, that's where this guy does not pass muster. Pass muster. I'm sorry, I got to keep my muster. It's where he doesn't pass muster is because he and all of his items are too clean. One of the first things that the hobos taught me is that you've got to have a tarp and coveralls and have a place to ditch them. Sometimes some of them said their technique is to obtain a small tarp, and when they would be approaching where the curve or long before actually when they get to the edge of town, they would try to as discreetly as possible because they don't want to go into the yard. They want to jump right at that point where there's no yard bulls, yard cops. Although they're in plain view of pretty much the whole town. It's a famous little spot there. Yeah, that was my biggest problem with him. He's got a white beard, which, man, you'd have to have like blue chem to get all the diesel particulates and all the soot off of you. One of the things you see in somebody who's actually been riding a train that's alive and active, hasn't been setting and weathering and getting washed off by rain or something. That's the first video of his. I saw it was clearly a grain car that he got in and out of the grain car, and had spots of rust on it. You could tell it had been setting forever on that siding, which tells me it's not an active siding and stuff, or at least that's not a very active car, although they do that for sometimes they'll leave them setting on the siding for years. I know I've slept in a boxcar to avoid a serial murderer in Bangor, Maine. It was after I've done my fair share of urban camping. This is, that actually, I started doing it a long time ago because when they started asking for like $180 for a hotel room and in a bad area, Washington D.C., that's when I go like, yeah, I'm gonna. But that's my primary complaint about Hobo on a Shoestring is that, number one, everybody loves him because he doesn't use any vulgarities. That's a little unrealistic right there amongst hobos. But bear in mind, I've been shown the whole hobo trade. One of the places you'll find them after they get cleaned up is that they go to the local library and study the railroad maps to decide, their next moves. They show me how they got, they tell me. And one of the basic rules is that you've really got to have like like a little tube or can of Gojo with you right off the bat. You got to have gloves, good hat, and stuff like that. Small tarp, and especially if you're staying on the outside, a lot of them stay on the outside of the cars, and coveralls. And you got to be ready to take that stuff and roll it up, ditch it to stuff, and clean up a little bit before you step into public. And all the videos I've seen of this guy he's obviously, especially with a white beard that old, he got a little bit of that white and that old, is to keep that thing untangled, because he's got a little bit of kink to it like mine. When it gets to a certain length, you have to have the right tools, and that means a rake. You have to have a rake if you got a real like Jew beard, you have to have a rake. You have to know how to comb that thing without pulling out all your hairs. It's just kind of like afro hair and stuff. You got to know how to do it. And he said, like, people were asking me like questions like, why you got that bucket and stuff? Well, for one thing, if you've ever tried to get into a railroad car, you can't buy like a open box car that's empty, is running. You can't get up there without. Well, you have to be at least my height and have some good jumping, to get your butt up there and spin around and sit down. It takes some doing. You got to be pretty athletic to be able to get into an open box car. It's nothing like you see in the movies. He has that little bucket thing. I know for one thing, in case he develops diarrhea, he needs does it really look like a bucket inside a bucket? That's what he was showing off in that video. But he's got to have that thing to stand on. He usually only hits sidings and only hits trains when they're stopped, because he's certainly not tall enough or strong enough to. And if you just latch on the outside and try to navigate while it's moving and stuff during a slowdown, then you're usually going to end up just covered with soot from head to toe. So yeah, that's my opinion of what's his name, Hobo Shoestring. Is that I think that he may have done it in the past, but now he's all cleaned up. He's got like 100,000 subscribers. He's probably getting a little check from Google, from YouTube, and stuff like that. He's got his probably getting SSI by now or something like that, and he's actually pretty healthy. He's missing a couple of fingers, but big deal. He's clearly still able-bodied. But in general, my first take on him is that he's a fake. He's too clean. He shows all his gear and stuff like that, and there's not a spot of soot on it. It's almost impossible to do. It's just doesn't happen. It's not like what you see in the movies. Those things, those box cars and stuff, they get covered with soot from coming from the engines, blowing from the engines and stuff. It's it's so just almost impossible. Oh, he had like a pad to sleep on and stuff like that. Had closed cell phone pad, but there wasn't no spot. Even though it was camo, still couldn't see a smudge on it. So I think the guy's just a good storyteller, but I think you're a fake, Hobo Shoestring.